I never expected that a rainy Tuesday afternoon at a bookstore cafe would change the entire trajectory of my life. But that's the thing about fate. It rarely announces itself with fanfare. Instead, it slips in quietly through the back door, while you're distracted, completely rearranging your furniture before you even notice someone's been there. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The rain had been relentless that day, turning the city into a watercolor painting of blurred lights and reflections. I ducked into Rosewood Books to escape the downpour, my jacket soaked through and my mood not much drier. The place was busier than usual, with others seeking the same shelter from the storm. The cafe section was particularly crowded, a sea of laptops, steaming mugs, and the low hum of hushed conversations. I scanned the room for an empty seat, my coffee growing cold in my hands. That's when I spotted her, sitting alone at a table, for two, completely absorbed in a worn paperback, a half-empty cup of tea beside her. Something about her posture, the way she held herself with quiet confidence, drew me in immediately. She had silver-streaked dark hair that fell just past her shoulders, elegant hands that moved gracefully as she turned each page, and an expression of such deep focus that the chaos of the crowded cafe seemed to dissolve around her. I hesitated for a moment, clutching my coffee, wondering if I should disturb her. But as if sensing my gaze, she looked up, her eyes meeting mine. They were a striking shade of amber, intelligent and curious. Before I could overthink it, I approached her table. "Excuse me," I said, gesturing to the empty chair across from her. "Would you mind if I joined you? Every other seat seems to be taken." She studied me for a brief moment, then smiled and nodded, marking her place in her book with a faded train ticket before closing it. "Please sit. It's too miserable out there to be turned away." "Thanks," I replied, settling into the chair. "I'm Alex, by the way." "Diana," she offered, extending her hand. Her handshake was warm and firm, her fingers slightly calloused in a way that suggested she worked with her hands. Perhaps an artist or musician. "What are you reading?" I asked, genuinely curious. The book looked well loved, its spine cracked in multiple places. "Oh, it's an old favorite," she said, turning the book to show me the cover. "The Unbearable Lightness of Being." I return to it every few years. It always has something new to tell me. Her voice had a melodic quality to it, with just the faintest hint of an accent I couldn't quite place. "I've never read it," I admitted. Though I probably should have by now. "Should?" She raised an eyebrow, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "I don't believe in should when it comes to books. They find you when you're ready for them, not the other way around." There was something about her perspective that intrigued me. At 40, I'd spent most of my adult life following prescribed paths. The right schools, the right career in finance, the right apartment in the right neighborhood. The idea that books, or anything, might operate on their own timeline, rather than one I carefully managed, was refreshingly novel. Our conversation flowed easily after that. We discussed literature, the merits of rainy days. She was firmly pro-rain, calling it nature's permission slip to slow down, and the peculiar charm of this particular bookstore, with its mismatched chairs and perpetually dusty shelves. Around us, people came and went, shaking off umbrellas and leaving wet footprints on the wooden floor, but our little island of conversation remained undisturbed. "So, what brings you here on this dreary Tuesday?" she asked, wrapping her hands around her cup, as if drawing warmth from it. "Escaping the rain, obviously, but besides that?" "Honestly? I was supposed to meet a client for coffee, but they canceled last minute. I was already halfway here, so..." I shrugged. "What about you?" "I come here every Tuesday," she said. "It's my ritual. 3 hours of uninterrupted reading time, 2 cups of tea, and usually a scone if Margot is baking that day." "That sounds like a perfect afternoon," I said, meaning it. The structured spontaneity of it appealed to me, a planned escape into literature. "It is," she agreed. "Though it's not often I have such interesting company." The compliment caught me, off guard, and I felt a strange flutter in my chest that I hadn't experienced in years. There was something about Diana that made me feel simultaneously at ease and slightly off balance, like standing on the deck of a ship in gentle waters. "You know," I said, surprising myself with my boldness, "you remind me of someone I used to know, my literature professor from college. She had that same way of making every book sound like a doorway to another world." Diana laughed, a warm sound that seemed to ripple through the air between us. "I'll take that as a compliment, though I hope I'm not quite as intimidating as most literature professors." "Not intimidating," I clarified quickly. "Inspiring." She was in her mid-40s then, and I remember thinking she had the perfect combination of wisdom and energy. Actually, I paused, feeling suddenly playful. "If you were 45, I'd marry you on the spot." The words tumbled out before I could filter them, a joke that revealed perhaps more than I'd intended. I immediately felt heat rise to my cheeks, wondering if I'd crossed a line. But Diana didn't seem offended. Instead, her eyes crinkled with amusement, and she leaned forward slightly. "I'm 55, she said, her voice lower now, almost conspiratorial. "Does that bother you?" Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I blinked, genuinely surprised. I would have guessed mid-40s at most. There was a vibrancy about her that defied simple chronology. "Not at all," I replied honestly. "I'm sorry if my joke was inappropriate." She waved away my apology. "Life's too short to tiptoe around each other." I found it refreshing. Most men my age or older are so careful, so scripted in their approaches. "Well, I'm 40, I offered. "So technically, I'm not your age either." "Age is just a number," she said, echoing the cliché but somehow making it sound profound. "What matters is where you are in your journey." Just then, a crash from the counter area drew our attention. A young barista had dropped an entire tray of mugs, sending ceramic shards skittering across the floor. The café fell momentarily silent before erupting in a flurry of activity. Offers of help, the manager emerging from the back, the embarrassed apologies of the barista. "Poor kid," Diana murmured, watching as the young man frantically tried to clean up his mess. "First week on the job, I think." "How do you know?" I asked. "I told you. I'm here every Tuesday. You start to notice the rhythms of a place." Onjidi stood up suddenly. "Come on, let's help." Without waiting for my response, she made her way to the counter. I followed, somewhat bemused but impressed by her initiative. Together with a few other patrons, we helped sweep up the broken pieces, while the barista, whose name tag read Ethan, thanked us profusely, his face flushed with embarrassment. "Don't worry about it," Diana told him kindly. "My first job was in a pottery studio. I once dropped an entire shelf of handmade bowls that had taken the artist months to create." Ethan's eyes widened. "What happened?" "Well, after I finished crying and the artist finished pretending he wasn't upset, he taught me how to make a mosaic from the broken pieces. It ended up selling for more than the bowls would have." She smiled. Sometimes our mistakes lead to unexpected beauty. I watched her as she spoke, struck by how effortlessly she had transformed a moment of anxiety into one of connection. By the time we returned to our table, the incident was over. But something had shifted in the atmosphere of the café. People, who had been silently working on their laptops, were now chatting with their neighbors, the invisible barriers between strangers temporarily lowered. "That was really nice of you," I said as we sat back down. "Both helping, and that story you told." Diana shrugged. "We're all just figuring it out as we go along. A little kindness goes a long way." She glanced at her watch and made a small sound of surprise. "I've stayed longer than usual. I should probably get going soon." I felt a sudden pang of disappointment. Our conversation had awakened something in me. A curiosity, a sense of possibility that had been dormant for too long. "Would you maybe want to continue this sometime? Maybe dinner instead of coffee?" The words hung between us, and for a moment I regretted them. We just met after all. She probably had a full life, maybe even a partner. But Diana didn't hesitate. "I'd like that," she said simply. "How about Friday? There's a little Vietnamese place 2 blocks from here that does amazing pho." "Friday works," I replied, trying to keep the surprise and delight from overtaking my voice. Should I get your number? As we exchanged phones to input our contact information, our fingers brushed, and I felt that same strange flutter again. When she handed my phone back, I noticed she'd entered her name as Diana, 55 and fabulous, with a winking emoji. I couldn't help but laugh. "Just so you don't forget what you're getting into," she said, with a mischievous smile. We parted ways. At the bookstore entrance, the rain having finally subsided to a gentle mist. As I watched her walk away, her silvery dark hair catching the emerging sunlight, I felt as though I was standing at a crossroads, though I couldn't have explained why. It was just coffee with a stranger, after all. Yet something told me that this random encounter would prove to be anything but random. The days until Friday stretched longer than they had any right to. I found myself thinking about Diana at odd moments, during a tedious budget meeting, while waiting for the subway, as I brushed my teeth before bed. There was something about her that had gotten under my skin in the best possible way. When Friday finally arrived, I spent an embarrassing amount of time deciding what to wear. Nothing felt quite right. Too formal, too casual, too trying too hard. I finally settled on dark jeans and a navy button-down that my ex-girlfriend had once said brought out my eyes. As I adjusted my collar in the mirror, I caught myself smiling at my reflection, feeling oddly like a teenager again. The Vietnamese restaurant was smaller than I'd expected. Just 8 tables tucked into a narrow space with exposed brick walls and hanging paper lanterns that cast a warm glow over everything. Diana was already there when I arrived, seated at a corner table with a pot of tea steaming between 2 small ceramic cups. She wore a deep burgundy wrap dress and a simple silver necklace, her hair pulled back in a loose knot that exposed the elegant line of her neck. She looked up as I approached, and her face brightened with a smile that made my heart skip. "You found it," she said, standing briefly to greet me with a light hug that carried the scent of something floral and spicy. "Your directions were perfect," I replied, settling into the chair across from her. "Have you been waiting long?" "Just long enough to order tea," she said, pouring me a cup. "It's jasmine. I hope that's okay." "Perfect," I assured her, though I wasn't typically a tea drinker. It seemed important somehow to be open to her preferences, to step outside my usual habits. The restaurant buzzed with conversations in both English and Vietnamese, servers weaving efficiently between the tightly packed tables. A large family occupied the center of the room, 3 generations sharing a meal with the comfortable chaos of long familiarity. "I love this place," Diana said, following my gaze to the family. "It reminds me that food is about more than sustenance. It's about connection." "How did you find it?" I asked, curious about the paths she had walked before. "Our meeting." "I used to live in Vietnam," she replied. 2 years in Hanoi, teaching English at an international school. When I came back to the States, I missed the food terribly. This place comes closest to what I remember." "You've lived abroad?" I asked, impressed and slightly envious. My own life had been largely confined to the East Coast, with occasional business trips that rarely allowed time for real exploration. "Here and there," she said. "Vietnam, Portugal for a year, 6 months in New Zealand. I get restless staying in one place too long." "That sounds amazing," I said sincerely. "I've always wanted to travel more meaningfully, not just in and out for business." "What's stopping you?" she asked, her head tilted slightly as she studied me. The question was simple but profound, forcing me to consider boundaries I'd accepted, without much thought. "I guess inertia? My job doesn't really allow for extended time away." "Ah, the golden handcuffs," she nodded knowingly. "I'm familiar with those. I was in corporate law for almost a decade before I decided life was too short to spend it doing something that didn't fill me with joy." "So what do you do now?" I realized with some embarrassment that despite our lengthy conversation at the bookstore, I knew very little about her actual life. "I'm a ceramicist," she said. "I have a small studio where I teach classes and create commissioned pieces. It doesn't pay what law did, but I wake up excited every day." The server arrived then to take our order. Diana recommended the PHO with rare beef and meatballs for me, choosing a vermicelli bowl with grilled pork for herself. She ordered in Vietnamese, the unfamiliar syllables flowing melodically from her tongue. "That's impressive," I said after the server left. "How many languages Do you speak? Fluently? Just three: English, Vietnamese, and Portuguese. I can get by in French and Spanish, but I wouldn't claim fluency. Just three, I repeated with a laugh. I can barely manage English some days. It's never too late to learn, she said. What else are you curious about? The question opened. A floodgate. We talked for hours, our food arriving and being consumed almost without notice as we shared stories and perspectives. I told her about my childhood in suburban Connecticut, my parents' messy divorce when I was 12, my decision to pursue finance because it represented stability. She told me about growing up in a military family, moving every few years, finding comfort in books and art that could travel with her. What about your personal life? I ventured finally, the question I'd been curious about since our first meeting. Are you seeing anyone? Diana's expression softened. I was married for 16 years, she said, to a wonderful man named Robert. He died 3 years ago. Heart attack, completely unexpected. I'm so sorry, I said, instinctively reaching across the table to touch her hand. Thank you, she replied, turning her palm up to briefly squeeze my fingers before releasing them. It was devastating at the time. Still is some days. But Robert was passionate about living fully. He would have hated for me to stop embracing life because he was gone. I nodded, unsure what to say. My own romantic history seemed trivial. In comparison, a series of relationships that had ended not with tragedy, but with the slow fade of compatibility or commitment issues. What about you? She asked. Any significant relationships? Nothing that left the mark yours did, I admitted. My longest relationship was 5 years with a woman named Catherine. We broke up 2 years ago. She wanted marriage and kids, and I wasn't sure. By the time I realized I might be ready after all, she'd moved on. Do you regret it? Diana asked. Not being sure when you had the chance? I considered the question carefully. I regret hurting her, I said finally, but I don't regret taking the time to know my own mind. I think I wasn't ready then. Maybe I am now, or maybe I'm still figuring it out. That's honest, she said approvingly. So many people rush into things or out of them without really understanding what they want or why. The restaurant had emptied considerably, the family, in the center long gone, replaced by a young couple so engrossed in each other they barely touched their food. The server approached our table with the check, a gentle hint that perhaps we had lingered long enough. Let me get this, I said, reaching for my wallet. We'll split it, Diana countered firmly. I believe in starting as you mean to go on. Her words held a promise that made me smile. Does that mean there will be more dinners? I'd like that, she said, meeting my eyes directly. I enjoy your company, Alex. Outside, the night had turned cool and clear, stars visible despite the city lights. We stood on the sidewalk, neither of us quite ready to say goodbye. Would you like to walk for a bit? I asked. It's a beautiful night. I'd love to, she replied. We strolled through the neighborhood, our conversation continuing to flow effortlessly. As we passed a small park, the sound of live music drifted through the air. A jazz quartet playing in a gazebo, surrounded by a small crowd of listeners. Shall we? Diana asked, already moving toward the music. The quartet was excellent. A pianist, bassist, drummer, and saxophonist playing classic standards with skillful improvisations. We found a spot on the edge of the crowd, standing close, enough that I could feel the warmth of Diana's arm against mine. After a few songs, the saxophonist announced they were taking a short break, and recorded music began playing through small speakers. The crowd thinned slightly as people went in search of drinks or bathrooms. Do you dance? Diana asked suddenly. Not well, I admitted with a laugh. Perfect, she said, taking my hand. Neither do I. And so we danced under the stars, swaying to Ella Fitzgerald's Moonlight Serenade, my hand at the small of her back, hers resting lightly on my shoulder. I was acutely aware of every point of contact between us. Fingers intertwined, the occasional brush of knees, the way she leaned slightly into me as we moved. You know, I said softly, I wasn't entirely joking the other day about marrying someone like you. She looked up at me, her expression curious rather than alarmed. Oh? I've spent most of my life being sensible, I explained, making the safe choice, but lately I've been wondering what I've missed by playing it so cautious. And you think I'm not the safe choice? There was amusement in her voice, but also something more serious beneath it. You're 15 years older than me, I said. You've lived abroad, changed careers, experienced great love and great loss. You help strangers in cafes and speak multiple languages and make art with your hands. No, Diana, you're definitely not the safe choice. You're the most exciting person I've met in years. She was quiet for a moment, still moving with me to the music. You barely know me, she said finally. I know enough to want to know more, I replied. Isn't that how it always starts? The quartet returned to their instruments then, breaking into a lively rendition of Take the A Train that made conversation difficult. We continued dancing, more energetically now, laughing as I attempted to twirl her and nearly lost my balance in the process. It was past midnight when we finally left the park, both of us reluctant to end the evening but aware of the late hour. I offered to walk her home or call a rideshare, but she insisted she lived close by and preferred to walk. I had a wonderful time tonight, I told her as we prepared to part ways. So did I, she replied, her eyes reflecting the streetlights. Thank you for taking a chance on dinner with a stranger. You're not a stranger anymore, I said. She smiled at that, and before I could overthink it, I leaned in and kissed her. Gently at first, then with growing confidence as she responded, her hand coming up to rest against my cheek. When we finally pulled apart, I felt slightly dazed, as if I'd been transported to another reality. Good night, Alex, she said softly, taking a step back. Call me tomorrow? Absolutely, I promised. I watched her walk away until she turned the corner, then began my own journey home, my mind replaying every moment of our evening together. I couldn't remember the last time I had felt this alive, this present in my own life. Whatever was happening, between Diana and me, I knew with absolute certainty that I wanted to see where it might lead. The following morning, I woke early despite the late night, feeling a sense of anticipation I hadn't experienced in years. I made coffee and sat by my apartment window, watching the city come to life as I contemplated when would be an appropriate time to call Diana. Too early would seem eager. Too late might suggest indifference. This kind of calculation felt both juvenile and exhilarating. In the end, I compromised by sending a text around 10. Last night was wonderful. Hope your morning is off to a good start. Her reply came almost immediately. My morning improved considerably just now. Coffee at Rosewood Books around 2? We met at the bookstore where it had all begun, finding the same table miraculously empty. This time, our conversation had the ease of established connection rather than the careful navigation of new acquaintance. We talked about our work, our favorite films, places we'd traveled or hoped to visit. I found myself sharing thoughts and feelings I rarely voiced aloud, drawn out by her attentive listening and thoughtful responses. Would you like to see my studio sometime? She asked as our coffee cups emptied. It's nothing fancy, but it's my favorite place in the world. I'd love that, I replied honestly. The opportunity to see where she created, to understand that part of her life, felt like a privilege. How about now? She suggested with a spontaneity that both surprised and delighted me. Her studio was a converted warehouse space in an area of the city undergoing the early stages of gentrification. Artist studios and small specialty shops nestled between abandoned buildings and industrial spaces. The large windows flooded the room with natural light, illuminating shelves of completed pottery pieces in various glazes, a row of wheels for students, and Diana's own workspace in the corner, distinguished by its organized chaos of tools and clay samples. This is amazing, I said, taking it all in. The space felt alive with creativity and possibility. How many students do you have? About 20 regulars, she replied, moving around the studio with obvious comfort and pride. I teach 3 group classes a week and a few private lessons. The rest of the time is for my own work. She showed me pieces in various stages of completion, mugs and bowls for everyday use, more sculptural pieces that seemed to defy gravity, a series of wall hangings inspired by ocean waves. Each item carried her distinct aesthetic, organic forms with unexpected details, glazes that revealed different colors depending on the light. Would you like to try? She asked, gesturing to one of the wheels. I'd probably make a mess, I warned her. Making a mess is part of the process, she assured me with a smile. Art isn't about perfection. It's about expression. So I found myself seated at the wheel, Diana standing behind me, her hands guiding mine as we shaped a lump of clay into something resembling a small bowl. Her proximity was intoxicating, the scent of her perfume mingling with the earthy smell of clay, the warmth of her body against my back, her voice close to my ear as she offered instruction and encouragement. When the bowl was finished, lopsided but recognizable, she pronounced it full of character and set it aside to dry. We'll fire it next week, she promised. Your first creation. Our first collaboration, I corrected, turning to face her. Without the wheel between us, we were standing very close, close enough that I could see flecks of gold in her amber eyes. The kiss that followed felt inevitable, a natural continuation of the connection that had been building since that rainy day in the bookstore. It deepened quickly, her hands moving to my shoulders, mine finding her waist, the world narrowing to just this moment, just this woman. Later, as evening approached, we sat on the small balcony outside her studio, sharing a bottle of wine and watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. Diana's head rested against my shoulder, my arm wrapped comfortably around her. I should warn you, she said after a comfortable silence. I'm not looking for anything casual. At my age, I know what I want and what I don't. What do you want? I asked, genuinely curious. She considered the question seriously. Connection. Honesty. Growth. Someone who sees me clearly and isn't afraid of what they see. She turned slightly to look at me. What about you? I thought about my life before meeting Diana. Successful by conventional standards, but lacking something essential. I want to be challenged, I said finally. Not just to succeed, but to evolve. To see the world through new eyes and find the courage to live more authentically. And you think I can help with that? There was skepticism in her voice, but also a hint of hope. I think you already have, I told her. In just a few days, you've made me question assumptions I've held for years. About age, about career paths, about what makes a life worth living. She was quiet for a moment, her fingers lightly tracing patterns on my arm. The age difference doesn't bother you? Really? Does it bother you? I countered. Sometimes, she admitted. I worry about what others might think, about whether you'll wake up one day and realize you want someone younger, someone at the same stage of life. I've dated women my own age, I said. What matters isn't the number of years you've lived, but how you've lived them. You've lived yours with courage and curiosity. That's far more attractive to me than any physical attribute. She smiled. At that, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. You're quite charming when you want to be, Alex. Only when I mean it, I assured her. The weeks that followed fell into a rhythm that felt both novel and oddly familiar. We met for dinner several times a week, spent Sundays exploring different neighborhoods of the city, exchanged daily messages about the minutiae of our lives. I attended one of her pottery classes, making a series of increasingly less disastrous attempts at cups and bowls. She joined me for a work event, charming my colleagues with her wit and perspective. 1 month after our first meeting, I invited her to dinner at my apartment. I spent hours preparing, cleaning every surface until it gleamed, selecting the perfect wine, following a recipe for coq au vin that required more steps than seemed reasonable for a single dish. When she arrived, bearing a small bouquet of wildflowers and one of her handmade vases to put them in, I felt a surge of emotion that caught me off guard. This woman, with her silver-streaked hair and knowing eyes, had become essential to me in ways I was only beginning to understand. Dinner was a success, the conversation flowing as easily as the wine. As we moved from the table to the couch, Diana tucked herself against my side, fitting perfectly into the space as if it had been designed for her. "Can I ask you something?" she said, her voice soft in the dimly lit room. "Anything," I replied, meaning it. "That day at the bookstore, when you joked about marrying me if I were 45. Was that really just a joke? Or was there something more behind it?" I considered my answer carefully, wanting to be honest without overwhelming her. "There was something about you that felt Right, I said finally. Like finding a puzzle piece you didn't know was missing. The joke was just my clumsy way of expressing that I felt a connection that seemed to transcend our brief acquaintance. She nodded slowly, absorbing my words. And now? After knowing me a little better? Now I know the joke was wrong, I said. Because the age doesn't matter at all. Whether you're 45 or 55 or 105, you're still the most fascinating woman I've ever met. Diana's smile was radiant, transforming her entire face. You're not so bad yourself for a youngster of 40. We laughed together, the tension broken, and when our laughter faded into silence, I leaned in to kiss her. A kiss that carried all the words I wasn't yet ready to say, but felt with growing certainty. That night, Diana stayed. In the quiet darkness of my bedroom, we explored each other, with gentle hands and whispered words of appreciation. There was none of the awkwardness I had sometimes experienced with new partners, only a deep sense of rightness, of coming home to a place I hadn't known existed. In the morning light, she was even more beautiful. Her hair tousled from sleep, her face relaxed and vulnerable in a way it rarely was during waking hours. I watched her for a moment before she opened her eyes, committing the image to memory. "Good morning," she murmured, stretching like a contented cat. "The best morning," I replied, leaning down to kiss her forehead. Over breakfast, strong coffee and slightly burnt toast, the limit of my culinary skills without preparation, we talked about the day ahead. Diana had a class to teach in the afternoon. I had a meeting I couldn't reschedule. "Dinner tonight?" I suggested as she prepared to leave. "I could pick something up and bring it to your place." "Perfect," she agreed, kissing me goodbye at the door. I watched her walk toward the elevator, feeling a strange mixture of contentment and anticipation. Something was happening between us, something significant and precious. And though part of me wanted to rush forward, to secure this newfound happiness, another part knew that what we were building deserved the time to develop naturally. As Diana turned to wave before stepping into the elevator, I realized with sudden clarity that I was falling in love with her. Not despite our differences, but because of them. Because she challenged me, inspired me, showed me possibilities I had never considered. "I'll see you tonight," I called, already counting the hours until I would see her again. "I'm looking forward to it," she replied, her smile the last thing I saw before the elevator doors closed between us. Standing in my doorway, I felt as though my life had been divided into two distinct periods, before Diana and after. And while I couldn't know what the future held for us, I was certain of one thing. I was grateful for that rainy Tuesday, for the crowded bookstore, and for the courage to approach a beautiful stranger with a terrible joke about marriage that had somehow, improbably, led me exactly where I needed to be. As Diana and I grew closer over the following weeks, I discovered layers to her that both challenged and captivated me. She wasn't just the confident woman I'd met in the bookstore. She contained multitudes, moments of vulnerability that she allowed me to witness, quirks and habits that made her uniquely herself, wisdom earned through experiences I had yet to face. One evening, about 2 months into our relationship, we sat on the small balcony of her apartment, watching the sunset paint the city skyline in shades of amber and gold. A half-empty bottle of Malbec stood between us, our fingers loosely intertwined on the small bistro table. "I've been thinking," Diana said, her voice carrying that thoughtful quality that always made me pay closer attention. "About what you said when we first met, about marrying someone if they were 45. I smiled at the memory of my awkward joke, not my smoothest line. "Perhaps not," she agreed with a soft laugh. "But it got me wondering. What is it that makes you hesitate? About age? Or rather about our age difference?" The question caught me off guard. We'd acknowledged the 15 years between us, but hadn't deeply discussed its implications. "I don't hesitate about it," I said carefully. "Not for myself, anyway. I worry sometimes that you might." Diana took a sip of her wine, considering my words. "I used to think life followed a certain pattern," she said finally. "That by a certain age, you should have everything figured out. Career, relationships, your place in the world. Then Robert died, and suddenly all those certainties collapsed." She rarely spoke about her late husband, and I remained silent, giving her the space to continue. After the grief began to subside, Not disappear, but become manageable. I realized something. We're fed this narrative that life progresses in a straight line, that there are appropriate timelines for everything. But that's not how it actually works. Her eyes met mine, intense and clear. Life is cyclical. We constantly begin again, in big ways and small. I squeezed her hand gently, encouraging her to continue. So yes, I'm 15 years older than you. I've had experiences you haven't. But you've had experiences I haven't too. We're not at different points on the same line. We're on different paths that happen to intersect at exactly the right moment. Her perspective struck me as both profound and liberating. I've never thought of it that way, I admitted. I think I've always seen life as this series of checkboxes. College, career, marriage, house, kids, all by certain ages. And how's that working out for you? She asked with a hint of teasing in her voice. I laughed. Point taken. Not particularly well, I suppose. Diana's expression grew more serious. Alex, I need you to understand something. I'm not looking for someone to complete a checklist with me. At my age, certain doors have closed, having biological children, for instance. If that's something you want in your future, you should know that it's not something I can give you. The directness of her statement was characteristic of Diana. No hedging, no sugarcoating, just honest communication about the realities we faced. I've never been certain about wanting children, I told her truthfully. It always seemed like something I was supposed to want rather than something I actively desired. That's fair, she nodded. But it's something to really consider, not just dismiss because you're feeling this way now. I've seen too many relationships fall apart when people realize they want fundamentally different things. Her wisdom and foresight were qualities I'd come to deeply appreciate. Where I sometimes rushed forward, caught up in the moment, Diana had the perspective to consider the longer view. I want you to know something, I said, turning to face her more directly. I'm with you because of who you are, not in spite of your age or because of it. I'm with you because you challenge me to think differently, to question my assumptions, to be more fully myself. Her eyes softened, and she reached out to touch my face gently. That's a good answer, she said with a smile. Now, tell me more. About this project you mentioned earlier, the one your boss is pushing back on. And just like that, we moved from the profound to the everyday, another quality of our relationship that I treasured. The ability to dive deep and then resurface, to tackle the big questions and then simply enjoy each other's company. Later, that night as we lay in bed, Diana curled against my side. I found myself contemplating the nature of timing. If we had met 10 years earlier, I wouldn't have been ready for her. If we had met 10 years later, we might have missed our chance. Entirely. There was something almost miraculous about the fact that we had encountered each other precisely when we both needed what the other had to offer. The next morning, I woke early to find Diana already up, sitting cross-legged on her small balcony, in meditation. I watched her through the glass door, struck by the peacefulness of her expression, the slight rise and fall of her shoulders as she breathed deeply. This was her morning ritual, I had learned. 20 minutes of stillness before, engaging with the world. When she finally opened her eyes and noticed me watching, she smiled and beckoned me to join her. Good morning, she said, her voice still carrying the tranquility of her meditation. Morning, I replied, settling into the chair beside her. Sleep well? Very, she said, stretching like a contented cat. I have a proposal for you. Oh? I raised an eyebrow, intrigued. My friend Eliza is having an exhibition opening tonight at her gallery. Would you like to come with me? It might be nice for you to meet some of my friends. The invitation represented a significant step, introducing me to her social circle, bringing our relationship into the wider context of her life. I'd love to, I said, genuinely pleased by the prospect. Fair warning, Diana added with a slight smile. Eliza can be a bit intense, and there will likely be questions about us. Questions I'm happy to answer, I assured her. Though maybe we should get our story straight. How did we meet again? Was it when I heroically rescued you from a burning building, or when you saved me from a pack of wild dogs? She laughed, the sound bright in the morning air. Let's stick with the truth. It's unusual enough. Strangers meeting in a bookstore, an impulsive joke about marriage, discovering a connection neither of us expected. When you put it that way, it does sound like something from a movie, I agreed. Life is stranger than fiction, Diana said, rising from her seat. Now, I have a class to teach this morning, and you have that meeting with the client from Singapore. I marveled, not for the first time, at how easily we had begun to integrate our lives, keeping track of each other's schedules, making space for individual responsibilities while creating a shared narrative. That evening, I met Diana at her apartment, taking extra care with my appearance for this first introduction to her friends. She wore a deep emerald dress that complemented her coloring perfectly, her silver-streaked hair arranged in an elegant twist. You look stunning, I told her sincerely. You clean up pretty well yourself, she replied, with an appreciative glance at my charcoal suit. The gallery was in the Arts District, a converted warehouse space with high ceilings and exposed brick walls. As we entered, Diana was immediately greeted by a tall woman with short, platinum blonde hair and dramatic black-framed glasses. "Diana, darling!" the woman exclaimed, embracing her warmly before turning curious eyes to me. "And this must be the famous Alex." "Eliza, this is Alex," Diana confirmed. "Alex, meet Eliza Chen, one of my oldest friends and a brilliant artist in her own right." I extended my hand, but Eliza bypassed it for a brief hug. "Any friend of Diana's," she said by way of explanation. "She's been unusually secretive about you, which made me all the more curious." "Nothing secretive," Diana protested mildly. "Just private." Eliza's eyes sparkled with mischief, which for Diana amounts to the same thing. "Now, Alex, you must tell me, what do you think of my little show?" I glanced around at the large-scale abstract paintings that dominated the space. Bold splashes of color intersected by precise, geometric lines, creating a fascinating tension between chaos and order. "They're powerful," I said honestly. "There's a conversation happening in each one, between structure and spontaneity." Eliza looked impressed and a bit surprised. "Well, he has an eye," she told Diana. "You might keep this one." As the evening progressed, Diana introduced me to more of her friends. Marcos, a chef who owned a small but acclaimed restaurant. Sophia, a literature professor who had taught with Diana during her brief academic career. James and Howard, a couple who had been together for 30 years and clearly adored each other still. Each greeted me with warmth and curiosity, asking questions that revealed how much Diana meant to them, and by extension, how much they wanted to ensure I was worthy of her attention. "So, finance," Marcos said as we stood examining one of Eliza's larger pieces. "That must be, structured." I detected the slight note of skepticism in his voice, the artist's reflexive wariness of the corporate world. "It can be," I acknowledged. "But there's creativity in it too, especially in my area. Finding patterns, anticipating market shifts, balancing risk and opportunity." He nodded slowly. "Diana mentioned you were different from her usual type." "Oh." I couldn't help my curiosity. "And what's her usual type?" Marcos smiled enigmatically. "Ask her sometime. But I will say this, I haven't seen her this animated in years. Whatever you're doing, keep it up." The comment stayed with me throughout the evening, a reminder that Diana's life was rich with history and relationships long before I entered it. Rather than feeling threatened by this, I found it reassuring. She had chosen to include me in this full, vibrant life she had built. Later, as we mingled with the other attendees, an older gentleman approached Diana with obvious familiarity. "Diana Reeves," he said warmly, "still the most captivating woman in any room." Diana's expression registered surprise, then pleasure. "Michael, I had no idea you were back in the city. How long has it been?" "Too long," he replied, kissing her cheek. "Paris, I think. That conference on contemporary ceramics?" "Of course," Diana nodded. "Must be 3 years now." She turned to include me in the conversation. "Alex, this is Michael Lawson, one of the most influential ceramics critics in the country and an old friend. Michael, this is Alex Foster, my partner." The term partner sent a small thrill through me. It was the first time Diana had used it to describe our relationship. Michael assessed me with interest. Partner? Well, that's news. Delighted to meet you, Alex. Likewise, I replied, shaking his hand firmly. Michael turned back to Diana. I'm in town for the Ceramic Arts Symposium next week. Please tell me you're participating this year. Actually, yes, Diana said. I'm giving a workshop on integration of traditional Japanese techniques with contemporary forms. Wonderful. I'll be sure to attend. Michael's attention shifted briefly to someone across the room. There's Janine Weber. I should say hello. Diana, always a pleasure. Alex, take good care of this exceptional woman. As he moved away, I noticed a slight tension in Diana's posture. Old friend? I asked casually. She gave me a measured look. Former lover, actually. Very briefly, many years ago. Her honesty was refreshing, if a bit startling. I see, said, unsure how else to respond. Diana's expression softened. Does that bother you? I considered the question seriously. No, I said finally. It's part of your past, part of what made you who you are today. And I'm rather fond of who you are today. She smiled, visibly relaxing. Good answer, again. The rest of the evening passed pleasantly, with more introductions, interesting conversations about art and politics and travel, and the gradual loosening that comes with good wine and engaging company. By the time we left, I felt I had gained valuable insights into Diana's world, the community she had built around herself, the respect she commanded, the vibrant intersection of creativity and intellect she inhabited. So, Diana said as we walked toward her apartment, the night air cool against our skin. What did you think? I think your friends are as interesting and dynamic as you are, I told her truthfully. Especially Eliza. She's a force of nature. Diana laughed. That she is. She's also fiercely loyal and unfailingly honest, two qualities I value highly. I noticed she kept calling me Diana's young man, I said with a smile. I'm not sure if that was a compliment or a slight. With Eliza, probably both, Diana admitted. But she seemed to approve, which is not something she grants easily. We walked in comfortable silence for a few blocks, the city quieter now as midnight approached. Marcos mentioned I'm different from your usual type, I said, remembering the chef's earlier comment. Care to elaborate? Diana gave me a sidelong glance. Fishing for compliments, are we? Just curious, I replied innocently. She considered for a moment before responding. After Robert died, I didn't date seriously. For a long time. When I finally did, I gravitated toward men who seemed safe, predictable. Usually academics or artists, often closer to my age or older. Men who wouldn't disrupt the careful equilibrium I'd established. And I disrupt your equilibrium? I asked, both amused and intrigued by the characterization. In the best possible way, she assured me, taking my hand. You make me question my assumptions, push me out of patterns I didn't even realize I'd fallen into. You're established enough to have stability, but young enough to still be excited about possibilities. Her description made me smile. I like that. Though I think you give me too much credit. You're the one who changed careers mid-life, who lived abroad, who rebuilt after unimaginable loss. Diana stopped walking and turned to face me, her expression serious in the glow of the streetlight. That's another thing I appreciate about you, Alex. You see me. Not just the parts I choose to show the world, but the whole messy, complicated reality. Do you know how rare that is? I was moved by her words, by the vulnerability they revealed. In that moment, standing on a quiet street corner at midnight, I knew with absolute certainty that I was falling in love with Diana Reeves. Not with an idea of her, not with the thrill of dating someone outside my usual parameters, but with the authentic, multifaceted woman before me. I'm beginning to understand, I said softly, drawing her closer. When we kissed, it felt like a confirmation of something we both already knew, that whatever was happening between us mattered, that it was worth pursuing despite the complications and questions that might lie ahead. Back at Diana's apartment, as we moved together in the darkness of her bedroom, there was a new depth to our connection, a sense of having crossed some invisible threshold into greater intimacy. Afterward, lying in the quiet with her head on my chest, I traced patterns, on her bare shoulder and considered the strange, wonderful path that had led us to each other. "What are you thinking?" Diana asked, her voice soft in the darkness. "That I'm grateful for rainy days and crowded bookstores," I replied, "and for my own terrible attempts at flirtation." She chuckled, the sound vibrating against my chest. "It wasn't that terrible. Memorable, certainly." "I meant every word, you know," I said more seriously. "About marrying someone like you. Even then, I sensed something special about you." Diana propped herself up on one elbow to look at me. In the faint light filtering through the curtains, her expression was thoughtful. "Do you believe in fate, Alex? That some things are meant to be?" It was a question I might have dismissed as sentimental before meeting Diana. Now, I gave it the consideration it deserved. "I believe that life presents us with moments of possibility," I said slowly. "Crossroads where our choices can lead us in vastly different directions. Meeting you was one of those moments. I could have chosen a different café that day, or decided not to approach your table, or made a more conventional opening comment. But something pushed me toward the choice that led me here. To you." She smiled, seemingly satisfied with my answer. "I've always believed that the universe has a way of bringing people together when they need each other, even if they don't realize it at the time." "And you needed me?" I asked, curious about what she thought I brought to her life. "More than I knew," she admitted. "After Robert, I was careful. With my heart, with my expectations. I built a good life, with work I love and friends who matter. But there was a part of me that was dormant. You woke it up." Her words touched me deeply. "And you've shown me possibilities I hadn't considered. That life doesn't have to follow a prescribed path. That it's never too late to reinvent yourself. That courage and authenticity matter more than conforming to expectations." Diana settled, back against my chest, her arm draped comfortably across my torso. "We make a good team," she murmured, sleep beginning to color her voice. "The best," I agreed, kissing the top of her head. As Diana's breathing deepened into sleep, I remained awake, my mind active with thoughts about our future. There would be challenges, certainly. The world wasn't always kind to relationships that defied convention. Some of my friends might not understand what I saw in a woman 15 years my senior. Some of hers might worry that I would eventually leave her for someone younger. Our different life stages would present practical considerations as well. Retirement planning, health concerns, the simple fact that she had already lived through experiences I was just beginning to approach. Yet none of these potential obstacles seemed insurmountable compared to what we were building together. A connection based on mutual respect, shared values, and genuine delight in each other's company. In Diana, I had found not just a lover, but a friend and mentor. Someone who expanded my understanding of what was possible in life and in love. The next morning, I woke to find Diana already dressed, sitting at her small desk by the window, focused intently on sketching something in her notebook. The morning light illuminated her profile, highlighting the elegant line of her neck, the concentration in her expression, the silver strands in her dark hair that I had come to find so beautiful. She must have sensed my gaze, because she looked up and smiled. "Good morning, sleepyhead. Coffee's ready when you are." I stretched and sat up. "What are you working on so intently?" "New ideas for a workshop series," she replied, closing her notebook and coming to sit on the edge of the bed. "I was thinking about what Michael said last night about the symposium. It got me considering how to make traditional techniques more accessible to beginners." "Always the teacher," I said with affection. "It's in my blood," she admitted. "My mother was a high school English teacher for 40 years. I think I inherited her need to share knowledge. It was a small detail about her past that I hadn't known before, another piece of the puzzle that was Diana." "I would have liked to meet her," I said. "She would have liked you," Diana replied with certainty. She valued authenticity above all else. She used to say you could forgive almost anything in a person except pretense. "Wise woman," I observed, like her daughter. Diana smiled at the compliment. "Any big plans for today? It's Saturday, after all." I considered the question. "Nothing specific. I should probably stop by my apartment at some point, check mail, water the lone plant that's miraculously still alive. Or," Diana suggested, "we could go to your place, take care of those thrilling tasks, and then drive up to River Point. There's a ceramic arts festival happening this weekend. We could make a day of it. The festival, dinner at that little seafood place overlooking the harbor. The suggestion was appealing. Not just the specific activities, but the easy way Diana included me in her interests. Her willingness to blend our separate lives into shared experiences. That sounds perfect, I agreed. Though I should warn you, my apartment isn't quite as elegant as yours. Standard bachelor fare, I'm afraid. Diana laughed. Alex, I've seen your socks on my bedroom floor and your attempt at making pancakes. That nearly set off my smoke alarm. I think I can handle seeing where you live. Her teasing was gentle, another aspect of our relationship that I treasured. The ability to be imperfect with each other, to acknowledge flaws and quirks without judgment. As we prepared for the day ahead, moving around each other with the comfortable familiarity of established routines, I found myself thinking about the concept of home. For years, home had been simply where I kept my belongings, where I slept and showered and occasionally entertained. But being with Diana was beginning to shift that definition. Home was becoming less about a physical space and more about her presence, the sound of her laugh, the scent of her hair, the feeling of rightness I experienced in her company. Later, as we drove to River Point with the windows down and music playing, Diana's hand resting casually on my knee, I glanced over at her profile against the backdrop of passing scenery. She must have felt my gaze because she turned to me with a questioning smile. "What?" she asked. "Nothing," I replied. "Just happy." Her smile deepened, crinkling the corners of her eyes in the way I adored. "Me too," she said simply, squeezing my knee. In that moment, with the open road ahead and Diana beside me, the age difference that had once seemed so significant faded into irrelevance. What mattered wasn't the years we had already lived, but the life we were choosing to create together. One day, one conversation, one shared experience at a time. The Ceramic Arts Festival was held in a large park overlooking the river, with dozens of artists displaying their work in white tents arranged in concentric circles. Diana moved through the exhibits with obvious excitement, examining pieces with an expert eye, engaging artists in technical discussions that sometimes left me behind but always impressed me with her knowledge and enthusiasm. "Look at the glaze on this," she would say, pointing out subtle variations in color and texture that my untrained eye might have missed. Or, "Feel the balance of this bowl, how it sits perfectly in your hand." I absorbed her commentary, slowly, developing a greater appreciation for the craft she had dedicated herself to. Watching her interact with fellow artists, I was struck by the respect she commanded. The way people lit up when they recognized her name or had used her techniques in their own work. "You're something of a celebrity in this world," I observed as we took a break for lunch, sitting at a picnic table with sandwiches from one of the food trucks that lined the festival perimeter. Diana looked genuinely surprised. "Hardly. It's a small community. Everyone knows everyone." "You're being modest," I insisted. "I saw how that young artist reacted when you complimented her work, like she'd received a blessing from ceramics royalty." A slight blush colored Diana's cheeks. "I've been doing this a long time, that's all, and I try to encourage new talent when I see it." "It's more than that," I said. "You've made a real impact in your field. It's impressive." She seemed both pleased and embarrassed by my praise. "It's strange," she said after a moment. "In my previous career, success was measured so concretely. Cases won, clients secured, billable hours. In this world, it's more nebulous. I'm never quite sure if I'm succeeding or failing." "What would success look like to you?" I asked, curious about her personal metrics. Diana considered the question seriously. "Creating work that resonates with people," she said finally. "Teaching in a way that helps others find their own voice rather than mimicking mine. Contributing something meaningful to the tradition I'm part of." Her answer revealed so much about her character, the depth of her thinking, her focus on contribution rather than accolades, her humility despite obvious talent. "By those measures," I told her, "I'd say you're extraordinarily successful." She reached across the table to take my hand. "Thank you for seeing that, and for being here today. I know this probably isn't how most finance executives spend their Saturdays." "I can't think of anywhere I'd rather be," I said truthfully. And as we continued through the festival, hand in hand, stopping to admire particularly striking pieces or chat with artists Diana knew, I realized how much my priorities had shifted since meeting her. The ambitions that had once driven me, corner office, prestigious address, recognition in my field, seemed less compelling compared to the simple joy of discovering new experiences with someone who approached life with such openness and authenticity. That evening, at the seafood restaurant Diana had mentioned, we sat at a table overlooking the harbor, watching the sun set over the water, painting the sky in dramatic shades of orange and pink. The day had been full in the best possible way, rich with new experiences, meaningful conversations, and the simple pleasure of being together. "Thank you for today," Diana said, raising her wine glass in a small toast. "For embracing my world so enthusiastically." "Thank you for sharing it with me," I replied, touching my glass to hers. "I'm beginning to understand why you left law for this. There's something authentic about it, something real." She nodded, understanding exactly what I meant. "That's it exactly. In law, I was always representing someone else's interests, arguing positions I didn't always believe in. With ceramics, there's no pretense. It's just my hands, the clay, and whatever truth emerges from that interaction." As we talked, sharing observations about the day and plans for the week ahead, I was struck again by how comfortable our connection had become. How easily we moved between deep topics and everyday logistics, serious discussions, and playful banter. Driving back to the city that night, Diana fell asleep in the passenger seat, her face peaceful in the glow of passing streetlights. I glanced over at her occasionally, marveling at the twist of fate that had brought us together. A rainy day, a crowded bookstore, an impulsive joke about marriage that had somehow set us on this unexpected but increasingly certain path. Whatever challenges might lie ahead, the questions from others, the practical considerations of our age difference, the navigating of two established lives becoming intertwined, I knew with growing conviction that Diana was worth every potential complication. In her, I had found not just a partner, but a catalyst for my own growth, someone who challenged me to live more authentically and appreciate the unexpected gifts that life could offer when you were brave enough to step off the prescribed path. As we crossed the bridge back into the city, lights reflecting on the water below, I made a silent promise to myself and to the sleeping woman beside me to approach our relationship with the same courage and authenticity that Diana brought to everything she did, to remain open to the lessons she had found in each other. The autumn leaves cascaded around us as Diana and I walked through West Side Park, a vibrant canopy of crimson and gold against the clear blue sky. 3 months into our relationship, we had fallen into a comfortable weekend ritual. Saturday mornings at the farmer's market, followed by a long walk through the park, coffee in hand, discussing everything and nothing. "I have something to tell you," Diana said, her voice carrying a hint of hesitation that immediately caught my attention. She rarely approached conversations with uncertainty. "That sounds ominous," I replied, trying to keep my tone light despite the sudden tightness in my chest. She smiled reassuringly and squeezed my hand. "Nothing bad, I promise. Just significant. I've been invited to lead a masterclass series at the International Ceramics Institute in Barcelona." "Diana, that's amazing!" I exclaimed, genuine pride washing over me. "That's prestigious, isn't it?" "Very," she nodded. "It's a 6-week program, teaching advanced techniques to professional artists from around the world. They only invite a few guest instructors each year." "When would it be?" I asked, already mentally calculating how we might navigate this. "That's the complicated part," she admitted. "It starts in 3 weeks. I stopped walking, surprised by the immediacy. 3 weeks? That's soon." Diana turned to face me directly, her amber eyes serious. "I know. They had a last-minute cancellation and reached out to me as a replacement. It's an incredible opportunity, Alex. The kind that doesn't come along often." "Of course you have to go," I said without hesitation. Despite the disappointment of a 6-week separation so early in our relationship, I would never consider asking her to decline such an opportunity. "We'll make it work. There's video calls. Time differences aren't that bad with Spain." Diana's expression softened with visible relief. I was hoping you'd say that. I've been torn, excited about the opportunity but dreading the separation. She hesitated again, then added, "There's another option, though. You could come with me, at least for part of it." The suggestion caught me by surprise. To Barcelona? Why not? She challenged gently. You've mentioned wanting more international experience. You have vacation time accrued. You could come for 2 weeks in the middle, experience Barcelona, see me in my element, then we could travel back together. The idea was instantly appealing. Not just the chance to see a city I'd always wanted to visit, but to share the experience with Diana, to witness her in this professional context that meant so much to her. I'd need to check with work, I said, my mind already racing ahead to logistics. But I think it could be doable, and I'd love to. Her smile was radiant. Really? You'd do that? Of course, I replied, pulling her close. Why do you seem so surprised? Diana rested her head against my shoulder for a moment before answering. I guess I'm still adjusting to having someone in my life who puts us first. After years of independence, it's a wonderful adjustment. We resumed our walk, now discussing practical details, accommodations, flight options, what parts of Barcelona we most wanted to explore together. The ease with which we navigated this unexpected development felt significant, a testament to the strength of what we were building together. There's one more thing, Diana said as we reached our favorite bench overlooking the lake. The Institute has arranged housing for me, a small apartment in the Gothic quarter. It's meant for just the instructor, but, I prompted. I told them I might have a partner joining me for part of the stay, she finished. They said it would be no problem. So if you do come, you'd be staying with me. Officially. The word partner still gave me a small thrill every time she used it. I can't think of any arrangement I'd prefer, I told her honestly. It would be our first time living together, even if temporarily, she pointed out. Are you sure you're ready for that? 6 weeks is one thing, but seeing each other's full daily habits. I laughed. Diana, I already know you leave wet towels on the bathroom floor, sing off key in the shower, and get unreasonably cranky before your morning tea. What other horrors could possibly await me? She swatted my arm playfully. And I've witnessed your inability to load a dishwasher properly, your questionable taste in reality TV, and your frankly alarming sleep-talking. I think we're even. As we sat there planning our unexpected adventure, I marveled at how quickly life could change course. 6 months ago, I had been living a meticulously structured existence, predictable, stable, and increasingly unfulfilling. Now I was discussing an impromptu trip to Barcelona with a woman who continued to surprise and inspire me daily. What are you thinking? Diana asked, noticing my momentary silence. That I'm grateful, I replied simply. For rainy days and crowded bookstores and terrible pickup lines about marriage. She smiled, understanding the reference to our first meeting. And age differences that turn out not to matter at all? Especially those, I agreed, leaning in to kiss her. The weeks before Diana's departure passed in a flurry of preparations. She arranged for a colleague to cover her classes, packed specialized tools and materials for her workshop, and spent long evenings researching the current ceramic scene in Barcelona to ensure her curriculum would be relevant and inspiring. I found myself impressed, as always, by her thoroughness and dedication. Where I might have approached such an opportunity with nervous energy and last-minute cramming, Diana prepared methodically, with equal attention to professional details and personal comfort. How do you stay so calm? I asked one evening as I watched her meticulously label containers of specialized glazes. I'd be a nervous wreck. She considered the question seriously. Experience, partly. I've taught internationally before, but mostly it's about preparation. Anxiety comes from uncertainty. The more you prepare, the less room you leave for unwelcome surprises. That's actually profound, I observed. Diana smiled. One of the benefits of being 55, darling. You accumulate a few insights along the way. The evening before her flight, we had dinner at my apartment. A simple meal of pasta and wine, nothing fancy but intimate in its normalcy. As we sat across from each other at my small dining table, Diana reached for my hand. Before I go, "There's something I want to say," she began, her expression unusually solemn. "These past months have been transformative for me. When Robert died, I thought that chapter of my life was closed, the part where I share myself completely with someone, where I build something meaningful with a partner. I was content with my work, my friends, my independence. I wasn't looking for more." I squeezed her hand encouragingly, touched by her openness. "Then you appeared with your ridiculous line about marrying me if I were 45. She continued with a soft laugh. "And somehow, that moment changed everything. You've reminded me that life isn't linear, that new beginnings can happen at any age." "Diana," I started, but she shook her head gently. "Let me finish. What I'm trying to say is, I love you, Alex, not despite our differences, but because of all we've discovered in each other. I don't say those words lightly or often, but I want you to know before I leave, even though we'll only be apart for a few weeks." Her declaration washed over me like a warm wave. Though our relationship had progressed with remarkable ease and depth, neither of us had yet spoken those specific words. Hearing them now, in Diana's characteristically thoughtful and direct manner, filled me with a joy so intense it was almost overwhelming. "I love you too," I replied, the words simple but carrying the weight of absolute certainty. "I think I have since that first day in the bookstore, though I wouldn't have called it that yet. But what I felt was the beginning of this certainty that you are exactly who I want to build a life with." Diana's eyes glistened with emotion. "Even though I'm 55? Even though our paths have been so different?" "Especially because of those things," I assured her. "Your experience, your perspective, the life you've lived, they're not obstacles to overcome. They're gifts you bring to our relationship." She rose from her chair and came around the table, pulling me to my feet and into an embrace that felt like coming home. 2 weeks, she murmured against my shoulder. "And then you'll be in Barcelona, and I can show you another part of my world." "I can't wait," I replied honestly. The next morning, I drove Diana to the airport, helping her navigate the luggage containing both personal items and specialized ceramics tools. At the security checkpoint, we embraced one last time. "Call me when you land," I said, reluctant to let her go. "It'll be the middle of the night for you," she reminded me. "I don't care. I'll want to know you arrived safely." Diana kissed me quickly. "I love that you worry, but get some sleep. I'll text when I land and call at a reasonable hour." As I watched her walk through security, silver-streaked hair distinctive even from a distance, I felt an unexpected sense of pride alongside the natural sadness of temporary separation. This remarkable woman, accomplished, adventurous, authentic, had chosen to share her life with me. Whatever challenges lay ahead, that knowledge alone felt like an extraordinary gift. The next 2 weeks passed in a strange duality. My work routine continued unchanged while my personal life transformed through daily video calls with Diana, sharing her excitement as she settled into Barcelona and began her teaching residency. She would walk through the Gothic quarter with her phone, showing me ancient stone buildings, hidden courtyards, and bustling plazas. In the evenings, she'd share insights about her students and their work, her eyes bright with the particular passion that always emerged when she discussed ceramics. "I can't believe I'll be there in 3 days," I told her during our call exactly 2 weeks after her departure. I had managed to arrange 12 days away from work, not the full 2 weeks we'd initially discussed, but enough for a substantial experience together. "I've been counting down," Diana admitted. "My students are getting tired of hearing when Alex is here before every sentence." "You've told them about me?" I asked, surprised and pleased. "Of course. They're all fascinated by my younger American boyfriend," she teased. "Especially Margot from Switzerland. She's determined to interrogate you about your intentions." I laughed. Should I be worried? Not at all. I've assured them all that you passed my extensive vetting process with flying colors. The banter was light-hearted, but beneath it lay something deeper. The understanding that our relationship wasn't just a private matter anymore, but something Diana felt comfortable sharing with her professional contacts, integrating me into all aspects of her life. When my plane finally touched down in Barcelona, I felt a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. Despite the long flight and time difference, anticipation kept me alert as I navigated through customs and into the arrival hall. And there she was, Diana, looking effortlessly elegant in a simple linen dress, her face lighting up as our eyes met across the crowded space. We moved toward each other, and when she was finally in my arms, the 2 weeks of separation seemed to compress into nothing. "Welcome to Barcelona," she murmured against my ear. The taxi ride to her temporary apartment took us through streets that grew progressively narrower and more ancient-looking. Diana pointed out landmarks and shared historical tidbits, her hand warm in mine as we navigated this new shared experience. The apartment itself was small but charming, tall ceilings with exposed wooden beams, a tiny balcony overlooking a quiet square, and simple but elegant furnishings. It already bore the unmistakable signs of Diana's presence. A vase of fresh flowers on the table, books stacked by the bedside, a sketchbook open on the desk. "It's perfect," I told her honestly. "It's home for the next few weeks," she replied. "Our home." Those words, "our home," carried a significance that wasn't lost on either of us. Even temporary, this shared space represented a new dimension to our relationship. After I had showered away the travel fatigue, Diana suggested a walk to help me adjust to the time difference. Hand in hand, we wandered through the labyrinthine streets of the Gothic Quarter, stopping occasionally for her to point out architectural details or historical sites. "Tomorrow I'll take you to the Institute," she said as we settled at a small outdoor café for drinks. "If you're interested in seeing where I teach." "I'd love that," I replied, genuinely eager to witness this aspect of her life. "Will I get to meet the infamous Margot from Switzerland?" Diana laughed. "Most likely. My students are curious about you. I hope you don't mind the attention." "Not at all," I assured her. "I'm proud to be seen with you." She reached across the table to touch my face gently. After so many years of independence, it's strange and wonderful to be part of a we again. The days that followed established a new rhythm. Mornings when Diana would teach, and I would explore the city or work remotely. Afternoons and evenings spent together discovering Barcelona's treasures. We visited Gaudi's fantastical buildings, wandered through art museums, and found hidden restaurants where locals outnumbered tourists. One afternoon, about halfway through my stay, I accompanied Diana to her workshop at the Institute. The spacious studio was filled with natural light and the earthy smell of clay. 6 students worked at individual stations, each absorbed in their own creations. Diana introduced me to each of them: Margot from Switzerland, Takashi from Japan, Elena from Argentina, and 3 others whose names and countries blurred together in my jet-lagged mind. All regarded me with friendly curiosity, clearly having heard about Diana's partner before my arrival. I took a seat in the corner, content to observe as Diana moved between students, offering guidance that was both technical and philosophical. Her teaching style was gentle but precise, never imposing her own aesthetic, but helping each artist refine their unique vision. "She's quite extraordinary," a voice said beside me. I turned to find an older man had joined me, his weathered hands marked with the telltale signs of a lifetime working with clay. "She is," I agreed. "I'm Alex, Diana's partner." "Joseph Marti," he introduced himself. "I run the Institute. I've been trying to get Diana to teach here for years. She has a rare gift. Technical mastery combined with genuine respect for the individuality of each artist." Pride welled up within me. That sounds like Diana, in art and in life. Joseph studied me with interest. "You know, when she mentioned her partner would be joining her, I expected someone different." "Older?" I supplied with a smile, used to this reaction by now. He shrugged unapologetically. "Perhaps. But I see now why you fit. You watch her with the same attention she gives to her art, fully present, appreciative of the details others might miss." His observation struck me as surprisingly perceptive. "We see each other," I said simply. "A rare gift," Joseph nodded, "in art and in life, as you say." As the workshop session concluded, Diana caught my eye across the room and smiled. Private connection amid the bustle of students cleaning up their stations and discussing evening plans. In that moment, I felt a profound sense of alignment. Our lives, so different in many ways, had found this perfect point of intersection. Later that evening, as we walked back to the apartment through streets now familiar after a week of exploration, Diana seemed unusually quiet. "Everything okay?" I asked, squeezing her hand gently. She nodded, then hesitated. "I was just thinking about something Joseph said to me today, after you stepped out to take that work call." "Oh?" I prompted, curious. "He said he'd never seen me so centered, so fully myself as I am with you." She stopped walking and turned to face me. "And he's known me for almost 20 years, through some significant phases of my life." I was touched by the observation. "What did you say?" "That he was right," Diana replied simply. "Being with you doesn't require me to be less of myself to make room for someone else. Instead, your presence somehow creates more space for me to be fully who I am." The depth of her words resonated with my own experience. "I feel the same way," I told her. "It's like you give me permission to be more authentically myself. Not just the polished professional version I show the world, but all of it. The uncertainty, the questions, the parts still figuring things out." Diana smiled, the streetlights illuminating the silver in her hair. "Perhaps that's the true measure of compatibility. Not how similar we are, but how much we allow each other to be different." We continued walking, now in comfortable silence, her arm linked through mine. The evening air was warm, fragrant with flowers from hidden courtyards and the salt of the nearby Mediterranean. Around us, the city pulsed with life. Couples strolling, friends gathering at outdoor cafes, street musicians playing flamenco guitar. "I could get used to this," I admitted. "Barcelona, I mean. The lifestyle, the energy." Diana gave me a curious look. "Could you? Really?" I considered the question seriously. "I think so. There's something about the pace here, the priority, placed on living well rather than just working efficiently. It resonates with changes I've been considering anyway." "What kind of changes?" she asked, her interest evident. We had reached a small plaza with a fountain at its center. Diana led us to a bench where we could sit and continue our conversation. "I've been reassessing my career path," I explained. "The promotion I've been working toward for years, the one that would mean more responsibility, more prestige, more money. And less time for anything else," Diana added knowingly. "Exactly. Before I met you, it seemed like the obvious next step. Now I'm questioning whether it's what I actually want, or just what I thought I was supposed to want." Diana was quiet for a moment, absorbing my words. "That's a significant realization," she said finally. "What alternatives are you considering?" I laughed softly. "That's the thing. I'm not sure yet. Maybe a lateral move to a position with more flexibility. Maybe consulting, which would allow me to control my own schedule more. I haven't figured it out entirely." "And does that uncertainty bother you?" she asked. "The not knowing exactly what's next?" The question struck at the heart of how I'd changed since meeting Diana. 6 months ago, it would have terrified me, I admitted. I've always needed to know exactly where I was headed, 5 steps in advance. But now, I'm learning to be more comfortable with uncertainty, to trust that clarity will come if I stay true to what matters most. Diana's smile was warm with approval. "That's quite an evolution, Alex." "I had a good teacher," I replied, taking her hand. "A certain ceramicist who once walked away from a prestigious legal career to follow her passion, with no guarantee of success." "Touché," she acknowledged. "Though I was older than you when I made that leap, I had more financial security, more life experience to fall back on." "True," I conceded. "But the principle is the same. You taught me that it's never too late to recalibrate, to choose a different path if the current one isn't serving your true self." Diana leaned against me, her head resting comfortably on my shoulder. "What a strange and wonderful thing," she mused, "to find in each other exactly what we needed to learn." The remainder of my time in Barcelona passed too quickly. Days filled with exploration and discovery, evenings of intimate conversations and shared experiences. We developed favorite cafes, discovered hidden viewpoints overlooking the city, and created rituals that transformed Diana's temporary apartment into a space that felt genuinely ours. On my last night, we sat on the tiny balcony, sharing a bottle of local wine and watching the plaza below come alive with evening activity. The impending separation hung between us, acknowledged but not dwelled upon. "What happens after your teaching residency ends?" I asked, a question we had deliberately postponed discussing. Diana took a thoughtful sip of wine before answering. "I return home, resume my classes and studio work, miss you terribly for the 2 weeks we're apart." "And then?" I prompted gently. She turned to face me directly. "That depends partly on you, doesn't it? On what you decide about work, about the changes you've been considering." It was a fair point. My professional decisions would inevitably impact our shared future. "I've been thinking about that," I said. What if we tried living together when you get back? Not just temporarily, like here, but properly sharing a space." The suggestion clearly surprised her. "You're serious?" "Completely," I confirmed. "These 2 weeks have shown me how right it feels to build a daily life with you. I don't want to go back to divided existences. My apartment, your apartment, scheduling when we'll see each other." Diana was quiet for a long moment, her expression thoughtful. "That's a significant step, Alex. One that shouldn't be taken lightly." "I'm not suggesting it lightly," I assured her. "I've given it a lot of thought. Unless you don't feel ready?" "It's not that," she said slowly. "It's more practical considerations. My place is filled with 40 years of accumulated life. Yours is designed for your specific needs and tastes. Combining them would require compromises from both of us." "I'm willing to compromise," I said immediately. "More than willing." Diana smiled at my eagerness. "As am I. But let's be strategic about this. What if we take the next month after I return to really think about how we want to do this? Which place makes more sense to share? What adjustments would be needed? How to merge our lives practically as well as emotionally?" Her approach was characteristic. Thoughtful, measured, focused on the practicalities as well as the emotional dimension. Where I might have rushed forward on the strength of feeling alone, Diana brought the wisdom of experience, the understanding that successful partnerships required careful foundation building. "That makes sense," I agreed. "A month of planning, and then we take the leap?" "A month of planning," she confirmed with a smile. "And then yes, we take the leap together." We sealed the decision with a kiss that carried the promise of our future. Not just the immediate plans for cohabitation, but the larger commitment to building a shared life, navigating our differences with respect and openness, and supporting each other's evolution. The next morning at the airport, our goodbye was bittersweet. 2 more weeks of separation awaited us, but beyond that stretched the exciting prospect of a new chapter together. "Safe travels," Diana said, straightening, my collar in a gesture that felt both intimate and domestic. "Call me when you land, even though it'll be the middle of the night for you?" I teased, echoing our conversation from 2 weeks earlier. "Even then," she confirmed, "I'll want to know you arrived safely." As I boarded the plane that would carry me back across the Atlantic, I found myself reflecting on the journey that had brought us to this point. From a chance meeting in a rainy bookstore to planning a shared life, from an awkward joke about age and marriage to a deep, authentic partnership that transcended conventional timelines. The aircraft lifted off, Barcelona receding beneath us, and I felt not the heaviness of departure but the lightness of certainty, that whatever challenges lay ahead, Diana and I would face them together, each bringing our unique strengths and perspectives to create something stronger and more beautiful than either of us could have built alone. In that moment, soaring above the Mediterranean toward home, I understood with perfect clarity what Diana had meant when she spoke of life's cyclical nature. This wasn't an ending or even just a new beginning. It was part of the continuous unfolding of 2 lives that had found in each other exactly what they needed to grow more fully into themselves. 2 weeks later, I stood in the arrival hall of our hometown airport, scanning the crowd for Diana's familiar figure. When I finally spotted her, elegant as always in a simple blue dress that set off her silver-streaked hair, the sense of homecoming was overwhelming. She moved through the crowd with purpose, and when she reached me, her embrace carried all the warmth and certainty I had come to associate with her presence. "Welcome home," she murmured, echoing my words from Barcelona. And in that moment, with Diana in my arms and our future stretching before us, I knew that home wasn't a place at all. It was this connection, this partnership, this rare and precious gift of finding in another person the reflection of your best self and the promise of all you might become together. "It's good to be home," I replied, meaning it in the deepest possible sense. As we walked hand in hand toward the exit, toward the life we were choosing to build together, I felt a profound gratitude for that rainy day in the bookstore, for my impulsive joke about age and marriage, and for Diana's unexpected response that had opened the door to possibilities I had never imagined. "What are you smiling about?" Diana asked, noticing my expression. "Just thinking about that first day we met," I replied, "when I joked, 'If you were 45, I'd marry you,' and you said, 'I'm 55. Does that bother you?'" She finished, her own smile matching mine. Little did I know where that conversation would lead. Little did either of us know, I agreed, squeezing her hand as we stepped out into the sunshine together, ready to begin the next chapter of our unexpected but perfectly timed story. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.